Our recommendation remains to hold on the opening of the land borders. We feel that emphasis should be placed at this point on the schools, opening the schools safely for a few months and monitoring the situation. But if the land borders are open as well, we have recommendations in place that will help us to ensure that we control the land borders as best as possible, similar to what we're doing with PGIA.
If you're only going for 24 hours, you won't have to test when you come back. It's unless you're there, I think 3 days, all of that. I see some gaps in my mind, because in 24 hours you can contract the virus and then come back into the country. Yes. 3 days later you end up positive, but you've already exposed others to it. So the concern there.
When we look at Omicron, and this is the variant that we're most concerned about for 2022, at this point we still have Delta as the prominent variant in country. But if we look at Omicron and how it's much more transmissible than even Delta, and we saw the burden that Delta had caused to our health system, it is pretty early still, because there's a lot that's not really well known as yet about Omicron. And for that reason, it probably would be best for us to delay the opening of the border until we can see really what's happening in other countries with Omicron. A lot of the recommendations, though, if we do open, a lot of the recommendations, we're still in discussion at this point. But in addition to the recommendations from the Ministry of Health and Wellness, we also need to ensure, this is where personal responsibility comes in. And many times if we travel, so even now at this point, although the regulations aren't there, that if we travel and we come in from the US, let's say, and we land in Belize and we have a negative test, there's no isolation, no mandatory quarantine, I should say, at this point. But the recommendation would be, if you do travel to another country, you can set some days if you're at work, so that if I come in today, I'm not back at work tomorrow. Let me wait 3 days and see what develops in the next 3 to 4 days. So I can take an additional 3 days leave, and I protect my colleagues as well. I isolate and I protect my family members as well.